I'm Natalie Sisson. Thank you for joining me because this is my first ever FinCon, and when I was reading the tips on how to be great at FinCon, I noticed that it said, hey, don't go to the sessions because they're recorded later, network, and I was like, I hope people turn up, so thank you so much for being here. Good start. This is a New Zealand accent, so hopefully you guys can understand me, and second, I picked up a wicked head cold on the plane, so I sound a little bit like Snuffleupagus rather than the normal husky New Zealand tone, so hopefully that's cool with you guys. So thanks for coming along. You guys enjoying FinCon so far? Yeah? Let's hear that one more time. You enjoying FinCon? Yes, okay, perfect. That's the American sort of thing I want. So today we are going to cover off on a topic that I truly love, and I don't know if I've actually ever presented on it before, and I don't see many people talking about it. So we're going to talk about how to do a content audit. Can I just have a show of hands in the room who are bloggers? People who are bloggers? Okay, great, perfect, you're in the right place. Prioritizing what to actually repurpose, big one. How many different ways you can repurpose, I'm sure you guys know this, but the options are endless. And most importantly, because I'm all about freedom in business, the art of not doing this all for yourself. Mike Vardy's in the room, he knows what this is all about, being productive and systemized. Cool. So who the heck am I? I am Natalie Sisson. I am a former co-founder of a tech startup that was in Vancouver. Before that, I did 8 years in the corporate world, but luckily for me, I escaped. It's good for some people. I started my blog, The Suitcase Entrepreneur, in 2009, which feels nuts to me. 2010 was really when it started becoming something that I was serious about. I actually wrote a book and I became a #1 best-selling author, in huge part thanks to my blog and my community. I'm a podcaster. I've been doing that since 2012. Recently passed 1 million downloads. Unlike some of the people here who are amazing and they do 1 million each month, this has been a 4.5-year journey for me, but I love podcasting. And I'm a freedomist, which is a made-up word by me, but basically it means that I live and breathe freedom, and everything that I do in my life is to have more freedom and adventure. So my podcast listeners are also freedomists by proxy. So I've written over 900 blog posts now, which kind of blows my mind on my site alone. I've done 285 podcast episodes to date, published 70 bonus podcast guides to some of those. I've run 3 blog challenges, which I don't know if anybody else has done those in here, but they work a treat. Had over 7,000 participants in those blog challenges. Been featured on something like this amount of sites in terms of interviews and all sorts of things. Pretty noisy out there, isn't it? Sorry, they're just going to keep coming in because I paid them to. Hi. And I've created 7 or so digital guides, which doesn't seem like a lot. I've probably done more free guides, but paid guides generating over 100,000 in revenue. And 4 online programs to date have made close to 400K, or probably a little bit over. Depends, I'm in launch mode right now, so I'll check my details later. So a lot of content is what I'm trying to say here, and a few of my friends have called me a content machine, but I'm pretty sure there's more people in here who do way more than me, and I think it's just because I have a really good system on how to go about creating great content. And, sorry, I failed to note that I've got 3 different membership communities that I've built over time as well. And all of this has just come from starting the blog. I was really thrilled to speak at TEDx. This is a bit of social proof for you, so you know that I am who I am. In June this year, which was amazing, talking all about freedom. Thanks to Grant, who's in the room, for some tips there on great speaking. And thanks to Amanda Abella, who's actually speaking here. I've been featured in the likes of things like Inc., which is pretty cool when that goes out and you can say, yep, I'm on Inc. today. So enough about me and why we're here. I just actually want to ask you the question of how much content do you guys think you've already created? Because I can probably tell you that you are sitting on a gold mine of content, and you're potentially not repurposing it in the best possible ways. Would that be fair to say? Yeah? Okay, hopefully I can help you out. So first off, I want you guys to do, either now or after the session, a content audit, which is pretty much just looking at where in the heck all your traffic is coming from and where all your content is sitting. So this is actually the top part of my sales funnel right now, which I put out visually, and I identified that there's just so many different sources of traffic that are coming to my site, and also so many places where I'm actually posting content. So some of these might look familiar to you. Social media, obviously, podcasts and blogs and videos. You might be doing advertising to bring in traffic. You might be just getting referrals when you meet people. You might be doing webinars, workshops, summits, podcast interviews, speaking at events, guest posts, media and PR. There's a lot of different things, right? When you look at it like this, you're suddenly like, wow, There's just so many different ways that you could be receiving traffic to your site to land on your awesome content that you've already created. So ask yourself, how many blog posts have you written? Actually, has somebody written more than 1,000 over time in here? 2 of you. Awesome. You guys are prolific writers. How many guest posts have you written? How many interviews have you done over time? Is that somebody's podcast, on video, or even just in person, and that they've now gone and written that up or published it? What media have you created or been in to date? You can take a photo of this if you want and tweet at Natalie Sisson and say thanks. And have you spoken at events? Have you been on radio? Have you been on TV? Because all of this stuff is repurposable, and you're sitting on it right now. And how many presentations? This is a big one. Who in here, I don't know, does presentations for corporates or speaking? And then you kind of, and you use that once or twice, maybe use it a few more times, but have you then put it out onto different formats and repurposed it? Yeah. Thanks for being honest. Okay, so how do you even know what to start with? Because even though I'm sitting on like 900 plus blog posts, I could like do this and say which one of those should I actually turn into a product or a service, right? It's kind of difficult. But it all starts with prioritizing it. So hopefully you guys have Google Analytics installed for free on your site. I'm not going to go too techie or geeky here, but the number one way that you can find out what is actually popular and what's resonating with your audience is to check your analytics stats. And for those of you who are Google Analytics geeks, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you've never actually logged in and checked it, you can see exactly what pages people are landing on, what is popular content on your site, where they're coming from, how long they're sticking around, where in the world they are, what they're finding interesting. It's all right there for you, which is pretty spectacular. If you've been on other people's sites, like if you don't blog just on your own and you're on different people's sites, you can always ask them for their analytics as well. Because this is gold, like this is where you find all the juicy stuff. And what I do is I look at the analytics and just see what is actually most popular. So I'm not going to start with all my content, I'm going to start with the stuff that's really juicy, that people love. And then off the back of that, I choose the top 10 to 20 sort of most popular topics or content, and I think, okay, now I'm going to go to work and split this out and make it amazing. Anybody else do this right now? 5 or 6 of you, awesome. Good to know. So you can check your main traffic sources. You can do it via social media. So for example, I know that Facebook drives most of my traffic by far, followed by Twitter, and all the other things that I do on social media don't really make a big impact. So if I was being really clever, I would just focus all my activities on Facebook and a little bit on Twitter, which is pretty much what I do, even though I love Instagram and various other platforms. Under social, yeah. So I don't know if I put that on this page. No, I didn't. But yeah, under social. So when you go there, you can go audience and overview, and you can actually see it broken down by social. Yeah, yeah. And you can also do it for all your top landing pages. So under behavior, you can look at all pages. Yeah, some heads nodding in here. And just this is an example over a space of a couple of weeks or something from a long time ago. I can see that most people land on my blog by far, but the next most popular piece of content is one that I wrote about the best membership platforms to run a program from. And it was a mega post. So I've started doing more mega posts on my blog once a month, putting out a really intensive, in-depth blog. Yes, that's exactly what I did. It's a really in-depth, intense blog where it's a super long form content. And it's super valuable, so it's not just a couple of 100 words or anything. I think that was probably about 6 or 7 pages worth of content. And it was reviewing the top 10 or 11 platforms that you could use to build a membership site. So it took a lot of research, it took a lot of time, and a lot of reviewing, but it's driven a ton of traffic. And then after that, I did another mega post on Asana. Mike Barty's seen this one, refers to it a lot, still gets tons of traffic. I think I wrote that 3 years ago and I've updated it several times, but people are like searching on how to use Asana, and I come up in one of those top results. So really, really useful. So I know that people are interested in tools because I always talk about tools, how to be more efficient and systematic with them. Of course, your about page is usually pretty popular, but after that, I can see the rest of the blog posts and pages that are really important for people on my site. So what I then do is I go in and I optimize all of those pages, or I see if they have really strong calls to action, or I see if the information is up to date, or I see if there's a way that I can point to my products or services within that content related to what the reader is using, which seems really obvious, but I think a lot of the time we forget. Yeah? No, I don't change a publish date. That's a fair point. I'm pretty honest. Like, if I wrote this back in 2013, I'll just leave it. But I will often say updated on the something of something. Yeah.
This might be kind of unrelated, but I noticed your pages
Yeah.
are very popular.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of secret sauce on how your, just on my analytics, it's all posts.
Right.
The blog does pretty well, and the homepage,
Yeah.
but it's all posts.
I think it's probably because I've been around for a long time, and I don't have many pages. Actually, I have a lot of pages on my site, but the key ones are the about pages or the start here page is typically the second most popular after the home page. And I do drive a lot of people to the tools page. So in my autoresponders and emails, I will always say check I've got these great tools for free here. So I think it's a combination of relinking and repurposing within the content and just consistently sending people to the popular pages. Yeah. Any other questions on that? Cool. So as I said, the options are endless, and this is where I wanted you guys to brainstorm a little bit more based off what you are going to find when you go and check Google Analytics, or even just like take a look at your insights on social media as well to figure out exactly where your traffic's coming from. Start brainstorming and ask yourself, what formats do you already have? So I know that I have written, video, and audio on the whole, and all of those can be repurposed back into the other format, if that really makes sense. An audio can be essentially turned into a transcript, and a video can be turned into an audio, and it can be written. What formats could it be repurposed into? Lots of people put their presentations up on SlideShare. You can have videos on SlideShare. SlideShare is one of those tools, social media tools, that I think is really underrated. I put up my painted picture each year, which is a vision for where I want to be 3 years from now. It gets like 40,000, 50,000 views. I can't tangibly say that it sends me more business, but I know people view that SlideShare and come across to my site and learn more about me. And what products can you create from that? Can you create an ebook from the audio that you've done? Could you create a video training series? Could you create a program, a workshop, or an event? It's actually mind-blowing what you can do with content, and I think we kind of get stuck, especially if we're bloggers, we just get stuck into blogging. But remember that people who are reading your content might also want it in a video form or an audio form. You don't necessarily have to be the one to do that, but it's great to be able to provide it in as many places as possible. So how do you create multiple streams of revenue? Well, I thought I would give you guys 3 examples from my own work. Shouldn't have that, because I just love examples. They're so much easier to learn from. So first off, I'm going to start with something that I actually did back in 2010, and I'm going back because it just sort of blows my mind how this stuff sticks around. I think my voice is holding up. So I started back in 2010, my area of expertise was social media for business. So I created the social media workout for entrepreneurs, and essentially I created, I think it was 12 blog posts over the space of 12 weeks, and they were basically a blog post with an exercise and workout on it for you to do. And this was probably the first time I'd done a blog series, and it went super well. It was really popular, and it was free. And then I finally put it all together into a free PDF. And it took a while, as you can see. It was it's probably a couple of months later, but I put it into this book. It's changed the cover since then. Back then, I thought that looked really cool. And it got thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads. So not only did that bring a ton of traffic to my site, then when I got the book, that became my main opt-in on the site and got thousands of downloads, really great feedback. I actually kept this in my main opt-in, but I added a few more things. For about 4 years, I updated it, but for 4 years, people were still referring to that workout book and saying it was great. So it was great content from the start, luckily, and it kept going and going and going for 4 years. And then from there, I actually ran my first ever social media bootcamp for entrepreneurs in Vancouver. That's where I was living at the time. So I went from free to taking this entire sort of blog post series and charging $1,500 for a 2-day workshop for it, which was pretty crazy. And at the time, I will admit, I was pretty broke. So I went from like $0 to $15,000 in the space of a couple of weeks, which was brilliant. But also, it was essentially the same content, but just more in depth and taught over the space of 2 days. And from doing those workshops, I gleaned a lot of information about what else I could include and what else people really wanted. And I turned that into the social media bootcamp online. So this was my first launch of a program, and basically I went back over all my slides that I presented during the workshop, recorded them, and put them up online in a bootcamp, because I was well aware that not everybody was in Vancouver, and I wanted to spread the message far and wide. So that was really successful. So you can see I went from free blog to free book to paid workshop to program. And then people were saying, oh, I'd really love some follow-up from that course. Do you have a membership club or any way that we can get continued coaching from you? So I started something called the Social Media Club, which is $19 a month. It was literally just a Facebook group, and I would put out a training every month, half an hour of the latest and greatest updates from social media. So I think I had about it wasn't huge, but I had something like 100 members in that at the time. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. So it was just basically, how do you go from free to paid when it's there on your site? The interesting thing that I've learned about human behavior is if you can package it into a format that's really valuable for people, they are willing to pay. And I'm coming to another example on that soon. But the workshop was much more in depth. It wasn't just like the blog post, you couldn't read it in 5 minutes. It was hands-on. I was showing people stuff in the workshop, and it was over 2 days. Yeah. 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 I did partly through the email list, which was tiny at that stage, but also the workshops were mainly through referrals and networks in Vancouver, because I'd built up a good reputation. But for the launch of the program, yeah, it was people on my email list and my community and through my blog. Didn't do any advertising. Yeah, it was early days. I was pretty naive about launching. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, they were brand new. Yeah. And I will say that the workout book was literally a Word document, prettied up and turned into a PDF. So I guess the point here is just to not overcomplicate things. Back then, the content was great, and that's what people wanted. They didn't need the full-on, beautiful workbook. Good question. So that was one example of how to take a piece of free content and put it through the grinder, essentially, and come out with a whole lot of different options. Another one that I love is this BYOB, so not bring your own booze, but build your online business. And this was back in, and this blows my mind as well, because this was back in 2011. Once again, I put out another free series. I put a lot of work and effort into this, but there were, again, 12 blog posts over the space of about 12 weeks. And I was literally writing them as I went. So there were all of these wonderful things in the series, and I said at the end, you'll get a PDF compilation of this at the end of the series. And that's exactly what I did. So that was all free. Once again, got really great traction. People found it really, really useful. And then I turned it into this book. So it just took, and this answers your question, I took free content and then I put it into a book that you had to pay for. And I was quite surprised that people, even though it's still there for free on my site, the blog post series, I prettied it up, I put in a little bit more detail, I added some resources, and I packaged it into a book. And people would pay for convenience. So I tried the 3 pricing tiers, which worked really well. A little hint, if you've never done pricing, people typically take the middle option or the best option. So I put it out just as a PDF. I put it out as a PDF with a checklist, resources, and a bonus coaching call that was recorded and included. And I put it out as an audio book, because by that stage with the podcast, I knew quite a lot of people really liked the format of audio. So that was a great learning lesson. Then I went on to write 2 more books in the BYOB series, which also went really well. And that was basically from understanding, as people went through the book, they wanted a bit more information on these particular areas, like how to hone in on your ideal customer and how to find your niche, and then also how to build a sales funnel. So built these off the back of the BYOB success, priced them accordingly, and also you could buy them as a bundle. So now I've taken a free blog post series and turned it into 3 products and bundling. You can see where I'm going with this, but it gets better. Then I took it on a world tour, because I live out of my suitcase. And so I'm traveling all the time, and I realized that I really love interaction with people. So even though almost all my business is online, I sometimes like to meet people face to face. And I went back to my days of doing the social media workshop, and I ran this around the world. Vancouver, in London, in Melbourne, in Auckland, in Tokyo, in Austin, I think. It was pretty nuts. It was $345 for a full day workshop. You can see I dropped my prices because I now didn't have the wonderful tax credits in Vancouver. And it was brilliant. I met people from around the world. I even had people asking if I would put on extra ones in their city, and I said, sure, if you can get 5 to 6 people together, we'll do it. And that happened in Tokyo and Kyoto, which was great. They also got my books as a bonus add-on, so once again, it was kind of encapsulating everything I did. So included in that price was the PDFs, which just helped them with their learning even more. And people love more content, and they love more value. They sold out in most of the places, which was fantastic. It was a complete experiment, made a lot of, I mean, that was just from the Vancouver event, so it was a really profitable year, and I was already traveling to those places, so it made a lot of sense. And then, this is my third example, just to sort of show you how you can backtrack on things. When my Suitcase Entrepreneur book came out in 2013, which was really exciting, became a bestseller, as I said. I then also did my own audiobook about 5 months later. By the way, you can record a really good quality audiobook by jumping on a bed and putting your head under pillows. It sounds just like you're in a studio, but it's really, really hot, and it's kind of bad on your back and your neck, but it does work. So went into audio format. You make a lot more money from audiobooks, and people seem to really like them. A publisher in Japan picked up my book and did this to it, which I thought was just so ugly, but apparently looks awesome in Japan. So once again, taken a book that was already there and found a publisher for it 2 years after I published, actually. So another impressive thing. Actually, it's all back to front and upside down. It's great. I love it. And then when I was actually launching my book to get more interest in it, I did a blog challenge and a contest giveaway to get my book and all sorts of awesome prizes. That was free, had about 1,000 people go into that blog challenge. And off the back of that, I got so much feedback from, your book was great, I loved it, how do I take it further? So I listened to all that feedback, I looked at what was popular in the book, and I turned it into a pilot program. And it was basically an extension of the topics in the book. Now, there's only so much you can say in a book. It's already 320 pages long, but there's only so much you can do. And once somebody's read it, you can't necessarily see their progress. So this has actually turned into one of my most profitable programs. I took the best content from the book and I've extended it out into advanced material and content for the Freedom Plan, which is what I'm just actually in the process of launching right now. So I've run it now for 3 years in a row, and I love it. But essentially it was taken from a lot of the ideas and insights and experience from my book. And then I reverse engineered that, and I haven't written this book yet, but I put it out on Publishizer, which is a really cool platform. It's a bit like Tinder meets book publishers. So you can essentially put your book proposal up there and get people to pledge like you would on Kickstarter or any of the crowdfunding platforms. So people can pledge to buy your book in advance based off the fact that you've told them what it's going to be about. So this is not going to be my program in a book, because that would be unfair to all the people who've invested in my program. But it is going to take some of the fundamentals around mindset, business, and lifestyle, my holy trinity. And it'll hopefully also act as a really great lead magnet to people who want to join the Freedom Plan. It's called Publishizer. So a bit hard to say, and it sounds like you're saying shit as well, but it's publish and then I-Z-E-R. It's a really cool little new startup. And essentially they introduce you to publishers as you meet your target. So that got well overfunded, close to $9,000 that people pledged. And I haven't written this book yet, but I am writing it next month. But that was just an example of going through and back the other side. So I'm just trying to show you guys examples here of how much you can do with the content that you already have. Steve, I'm glad you've opened your eyes again, buddy. I thought I'd lost you. I can see you all. Okay, so where the heck should you put the repurposed content once you have it? Well, hopefully I've shown you some examples. You can turn it into workshops and events if that's your thing. But outside of that, you can turn some of your best content into an opt-in on your homepage. This is just an example of somebody, so they've put together a whole series about how to get glowing skin, if that interests you. You can turn it into something on your sidebar. So Anne Samoylov is like the launch queen, and she has a Launch Essentials toolkit, which is actually taken from some of her best blog posts and a couple of podcasts that she did, and she turned it into a really great PDF book. For my mega post on what's the best membership site, because it was so long, I turned it into a 47-page ebook that they could download. So that took a lot of effort, and it was cost on my behalf, but they can get that for free. So if people were reading through that and they're like, oh my God, it's too much information, but I want to be able to access it later, I can just download the PDF. So in return for giving me their email, they get that. And I just follow up with useful resources and other blog posts. So that was a great way to repurpose that. People really, really appreciated it. If you're Derek Halpern, you can take some of your best tips and videos and then put it into a PDF on how to get 5,000 subscribers for free. I really love his wording here. Give me the free ebook, or I reject the free ebook. It just makes you sound like such an idiot if you're going to reject it, right? Smart psychology. So you can have a pop-up box on your site, and you can test this on multiple pieces of content that you have. You could turn it into a quiz. I ran a quiz on my site for a long time. It wasn't actually so much it was content, but you answered questions, and then it would lead you off to pages to say, here's more blog posts and content that I've written specifically for the level that you've got to. So people really appreciate that. They get their result, and then there'd be a whole bunch of free content for them to look at and follow up with. You can turn it into resource pages. So I know a lot of people, we hide a lot of our best content, not on purpose, but it does, it gets buried in amongst. So pull it out into a resource page. I'm always talking about online tools and technology, social media and online marketing, and outsourcing and productivity. So on those pages, if you go to it, it's just all the best content and the most popular content via analytics and through comments and sharing, all put out in one page. So people can just dig further into the content. They don't have to sign up for it, but if they do want to, you can then have a PDF download on that page once again of your best content. It's pretty easy once you start looking at it, but it's all about prioritizing which of the stuff you really want to use. Does that make sense? Cool. You can put it into a free video training. So I've done a lot of work around outsourcing, team building, systems, sexy operating procedures, as I like to call them. So I actually did a 23-minute training video, which people love, and you can opt in for free, and then it leads off to one of my programs. Converts really well because it's really great content, and I put a lot of work into this, and it's very specific and it's really helpful. So, which leads me to how not to do this all yourself, because I know you guys are already really busy creating all this content, and this is where people who are smart and effective can help you turn it into all sorts of different things. Does anybody in here have assistants, team members, content strategists? Great. Are you putting them to work in the best possible way and letting their talent shine, or are you like, I'm going to do it all? Probably a little bit of both, huh? Bye, Grant. He's trying to sneak out. So first off, you can watch that free training. It might help. It basically shows you how to outsource to somebody and hand something over that you're currently doing a really good job of, but maybe isn't the best use of your time and energy. But I have a system in place now. So for example, with my podcast, all I do is record the podcast. I put the audio file into Dropbox the minute I've recorded that interview, and my team does the rest. So my virtual assistant will actually do up the show notes, he'll do up the social media images, my podcast editor will edit it, I'll do an intro, outro based off the write-up, and then they'll put it all up on Libsyn and publish it. So I used to do all of that, and these days I just do the interview, which is great because that's the thing that I'm best at. So you can hire a contractor to write transcripts of videos, audios that you've done, even if it's on your site or somebody else's. Turn those wonderful transcripts into books, resources, checklists, ebooks, whatever it may be. Same for anything that you've done interview-wise. You can turn your written content, as I said, into a really beautiful SlideShare presentation that teaches people, may lead to some speaking gigs for you or to some more customers. You can turn them into infographics, into PDFs, into ebooks, into social media posts. You can even take some of your best content and just have it fired out in social media consistently, bring people back to the good stuff. You can map that out into a mini course, a product, or even maybe a full program. Hopefully your cogs are turning in here on what you're sitting on right now. And you can use a combination of tools like Asana. This is Asana in here. Isn't it awesome? Okay, yeah. Google Drive and Slack. These are the three main tools that my team use religiously, and they're awesome. But everything that we do, launches, anything we create, all goes through those three tools. It's spectacular. And we're across lots of time zones, so. But it just really helps once you get that. So your next steps from me, wow, I am so early because I'm going to take questions, to find the highest converting pages, most popular content on your site from Google Analytics or any analytics tool that you have, and put at least one strong call to action on that page, whether that is to get more content that you have, whether that is to opt in for something that you've repurposed, or whether that potentially is to buy a product or a service or book you or consult with you, whatever it may be. But we are sitting on literally a gold mine of content that we should be putting out in front of people who need to see it. And so many people, including myself, don't always do this. So people read the blog post and then they're like, oh, now what do I do? What does Natalie want me to do next? So give it to them. Monitor which of those lead capture tools that I went through before, a pop-up box, an opt-in, a homepage, whatever it may be. Monitor which ones of those are doing the best job for you and just get rid of the next. Or get rid of the ones that aren't working. And then continue to analyze this. I think this is probably where we all sort of fall down. We're so busy producing content all the time. We don't actually go back to the great stuff that we have and think, how could I bring this back out again? Or how could I reformat this or update this or refresh this? So I just want you to let me know how you get on with that. I've got a blog challenge if you guys want to see it in action. It's pretty exciting. And I'm happy to take questions now. We're half an hour early for the food truck. So great, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Great question, and thank you for pointing that out because I realized I'd done that and then not put it in. So what I actually do is I have an editorial content calendar for the entire year, and we do refresh that a lot, but it's absolutely helped me and my team to just run the business better. So we know months ahead of time what content we're putting out in the blog, what content I'm talking about in the podcast, what products we could create from that, who we need to interview, and who we need to support in terms of their programs or products. But to answer your question about maybe feeling like it might not be relevant, you can update that. So at any point you can update it and see what's working. But theming out your months is a really smart move. Does anybody else theme out their months? Yeah, perfect. Have you found it so much easier to create based off it? Yeah. So for example, January, great time for people to take action on their finances, start saving, whatever it may be, start your new financial plan. So your entire January theme could be dedicated to content based around that, and maybe even a little mini product or an event that goes with that. And then February, for example, is a great time for people to get into health and fitness because January they're still partying and doing the New Year's thing, and by February they're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to go into fitness. So if you're in the fitness niche, if you are, that's a great time to start talking about that. And the more you can plan that out or break down your key topics based off popular content, the easier it is for the whole year. Does that help? Yeah. Do you want me to go into more depth? Yeah, to a point. We don't go into that level of detail, but it's pretty inherent that if we've got a blog post or a podcast going out on this, there will be tweets, shares, etc. related to the content in that. So we kind of have a standard operating procedure that says when this goes live, these things happen. But it's what you can do within your own, team, or if you don't have anybody on board. Is that in the training? Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yes. Sorry. Go here.
But I like the idea of going themes, and I have a tip, and I'm not actually doing this, but I started it back in January when I was trying to put together, if there are popular magazines in your niche, you do a search for, like, let's say, Good Housekeeping media kit, they have their whole calendar in there of what their themes are going to be. Advertisers are trying to, get advertising in. So if January, if December is their holiday Christmas month, advertisers would have to have it in by, let's say, October. So they'll tell you way in advance.
That's a great point.
You can kind of piggyback, like if you know that HGTV is going to do like pop the color in June, well maybe you could kind of, that's going to be popular, so maybe you could do like pop the color the month before, so your content is relevant to what.
Yeah, you've hit on a really good point there. So it's more about thinking about yourself as sort of a publishing distribution house and setting up your whole advertising editorial content calendar for the year. And I actually then have a calendar for my whole year as well of prioritizing holidays first, but launches, and then what media I'd need to contact well ahead of time in order to do that. So if you guys are launching something, you might need to 3 or 4 months ahead of time reach out about interviews, about media, about podcasts, about guest posts, because everybody else has their own deadlines and calendars as well. So that's a great point. Thank you. I'm pretty quick at it because I love brainstorming, but I would say half an hour to an hour, quite honestly. For the whole year, often maybe 2 hours, but that's because I know my audience really well now, and I run a survey every single year where I ask them what their main challenges are and what they're struggling with. So it's often coming up as the same stuff. It's usually about 10 key topics, and so I know that I should be covering those 10 key topics. But yeah, you could plan out in a half day or a full day. You could do it with other friends. You could get people helping to brainstorm. Yeah. Yes.
I think when you're dealing with personal finance or anything that somebody can continuously learn, there's more opportunity to have, webinars and classes. And what about for like one-time purchase type thing? Like you sell like TVs, or in my case, I sell life insurance, which typically, the sale and then 10 to 20 years later, you might do something else,
Yeah.
But nobody's going to take a course on how to buy life insurance.
No, that's true, but ironically my dad was a life insurance salesman, so I think there's always opportunities for being able to upsell them or to talk to them about other products that they might not have even known of. So you might sell life insurance, but then are you affiliated with somebody else who you can say, what about health insurance? And also other members in their family that they could refer you to. And so I agree, maybe somebody's not going to buy a course on how to buy the best life insurance, but you never know until you test that. So you could put up an opt-in page saying all the benefits for taking this course before you've even created it, see if there's enough interest for people opting into it, and then create it if there is. But I feel there's just always things that, just by putting out content that's going to help them maybe use the life insurance better, you're going to be the most valuable person to them, and therefore they will refer you more business as a result. Does that make sense? So maybe it's not quite as related, but there's always ways that you can help people further. Yeah. Yep. And maybe if they go with you, you give them a free course on how to make the most of it. I don't know, it's hard. It's life. Yes. Do I repurpose my interviews? Yes. So to a point, and I need to do that even more. So we have PDF bonus downloads that we were doing for about 70 of the episodes, where we'd pull out the best content from those interviews and give it away as a free PDF that people could follow up and take action. But the whole intention now, I've hired a content strategist, is to go back through some of the most popular interviews and start pulling out the really salient points from that and look at what else we can do with those interviews and the content, like infographics, slide shares, etc. Yeah. At the back. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a good point, actually. So, I look at things like TechCrunch, and they're having to do that all the time, but they'll still talk about specific topics related to tech entrepreneurs or software, etc. Maybe you could just have a breaking news that every single Monday or sooner you're going to have a breaking news component where you're going to actually look at what's coming up in the headlines, see if there's any previous content that you've written that you can rehash out for this and update it. Or maybe you just need to have that person who's on call who can write that piece of article but refer back to past content that might relate. So I think there's always ways that maybe you have to be a bit more fresh on, but you can always drag them back into good things that you've done before. It's a fair point, but I'd say you'd have your stuff set out and then an ability to be flexible to allow for some breaking news. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea. I should do that. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. We do to a point, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing more of, because like you guys, I'm just constantly creating content, and you don't go back and do that. So while I have a pretty good idea of what we have existing for that, there's still a lot more that we could go through. Yeah. To a point, I think in the past I used to just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what would stick, and now that I know more about what they want and my audience has changed. So for example, I travel the world, live out of a suitcase, run my business from anywhere. I thought people following me or my community wanted to do the same. Turns out they think I'm nuts. They just like following me vicariously. But 70% of them will actually want to work from home and have more freedom and systems. So that's the stuff I want to talk about. So I don't actually even write about travel. It's quite ironic. People go, are you a travel blogger? I'm like, no, I actually write about business and mindset. So yeah, I think once again it comes back to your audience, not necessarily what you think's best, but based off those analytics and the insights, and also your gut feel to a certain point, like what's resonating. Yeah. I would always probably tweak it and update it because things change, but I would probably just repost something that I wrote that was really good on like Forbes or Huffington. So my deal on those is you can always put them out into other sites. Sometimes they will take existing content and they don't need you to change it at all. So I'd check up on that first, but then that's a way of getting it out to another audience, but not posting it on your own site. Because if you duplicate it on your own site, I'm pretty sure Google penalizes that for the experts in here, yeah. You can change the date. That's true. All these changing date people in here. You guys sneaky. Any other questions? Anything at all? It's a really good question. So yes, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So I use a Google spreadsheet for my content calendar, and it's called the Plan of Attack. And the first tab actually is goals and the mission for the year. Second calendar is the entire annual calendar of where I'm going to be, what I'm doing, the most important things. Third is the content editorial calendar, and we literally just put out the months. I know that I'm putting out a weekly podcast, and then we fit everything else around that and launches. So each month has like 4 podcast titles, a mega post, and on the left-hand side it will say what we're either promoting or what we're producing, or who we're supporting. And then the next tab is like guest posts that we could write on, and then all the metrics. So that's kind of my plan of attack that guides us. Yeah. Very cool. Good questions. Yes?
I have a question about the metrics. How soon after you produce a piece of content that you go back and look at the metrics? And are you repeatedly going back? For example, if you publish a blog post, are you looking at it maybe a week later, a month later, maybe 6 months later to see like how often should we be? Because that's one thing that
That's a good question.
I don't go back and look to see how well. My VA and I were starting to do that.
Yeah.
But how often do you go back and check?
So we do a weekly, like every week my VA will report, virtual assistant, will give me the metrics. But I would say you need at least often a month for something to go out to really kind of see it, unless your site gets a huge amount of traffic and you can see got a huge spike from that, so it's really popular. But you know, some content just over years gets more and more and more popular. So maybe it wasn't when you put it out, but thanks to Google search rankings, 3 years later it's one of your top posts. Like a lot of those ones I showed you are old, but they keep coming up in the search rankings. But I'd say keeping an eye on it every single week is really smart, because we also look at our email open rates, the amount of traffic, which the social sites are sending, where people are landing. And it just gives you this picture of what's going up and what's going down and what do you need to change. Yeah, good question though. More questions, love questions. You're not allowed to go to the food carts yet. Anything else? Yes. Yeah, to your point. So that was about outsourcing and operations. How do I train my team? So I've just recently taken on more people, which is so much fun in some ways and ironically more frustrating in others. So it just takes time to, when you've done everything yourself for a long time. But how I train them is I call these sexy operating procedures. I actually outline it in that video pretty clearly. And we start with just one task, and I will often video how I do that task. I'll then give them the video to write up the standard operating procedure in their own words, exactly what they need to do. And I'll check that, and that's then the document that we refer to all the time. So that's the main way. And then in terms of training, I mean, that kind of is it, but we are on Slack almost every single day. And where possible, best practice, we get people to, we have like a Slack channel that's like best ideas or to implement. So people will put things in there about what they've been doing recently or how they've improved it. I could go into it in a lot more detail, but it's actually more basic than I think you'd think. It's just being really clear on communication and being really clear on the priorities. So it always comes back to my vision and goal and plan of attack for the year. And off the back of that, everybody knows what they really should be doing. Yeah, and I'm also trying to encourage them to actually create products. So a few of the team members who have joined, I've said if you want to go back through my content and you create an awesome product off the back of that, you can promote it to my community and I'll give you like half of the commission. So that works. Like it's a motivator and it's a really great use of all the stuff that I have that I frankly probably don't have the time or inclination to go back on, but would be really useful. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point.
I'm very type A, and I have to hire someone.
Yeah. Yeah. First hire is the hardest, and then it definitely gets easier. I have found most of my great team members through my community. So every single person working for me right now, about 5 or 6 of them, have all been in my community. They've emailed me saying, I love what you do, or I've seen their work as they've been part of a blog challenge, or they've come to my retreat, or they've come to a mastermind. And so I know that they get what I'm about, they get my values, they know what I stand for. And I've also sort of seen them in action. So that's worked really well. I have hired also, I love Upwork. So Upwork's this huge online community, 1 million+ contractors, super skilled. And I've used that really effectively, especially for jobs that are more like customer service or admin. I've tried it for website and it's screwed up right royally. Like they screwed up my website and took it down. So I'm probably a little bit wary on that, but for everything else it's been great. If I was going to build a mobile app, if I was going to need a designer, I'd definitely look on there. But so generally referrals and then through Upwork. And then how I test them is I'll often give the same task to the 2 people that I'm looking at hiring and just see who either does it better, or if they both do it well, I might hire them both, because you never know when somebody's going to disappear. And in terms of trusting, you've just got to trust them. I use OurDeal, ourdeal.com, which is an online contract service, and I lay out the terms of the contract. They're all independent contractors. Nobody works full-time for me. And in it, we state what they're doing, what they're capable of doing, and the kind of the agreement. So it's all written and signed electronically, and that's about the most you can go off on that. But I think has anybody heard of Laura Roeder? She's got a cool program called Creating Fame, and I love her take on it. She was like, when she was hiring people and they come back to her going, how do I do this? Is this right? And it was just bombarding her and her team. She'd just go back with 2 words, which are your call. And so I think the minute you put it back into their responsibility, people really step up in your team. They're like, oh, Natalie trusts me to make a business decision for her. Therefore, what would I do in this situation? Okay, this is what I do. They come back to me and I'm like, that's exactly what I do, so go ahead.